Well, first, it's a pleasure to be here. And I think what I'm most excited about with respect to the Digital India initiative is I think we've seen what technology is able to accomplish in terms of transforming countries, societies, education, healthcare. And I think the clarity with which the Prime Minister laid out why it's important and the steps that they intend to take to make that a reality for India is refreshing. It's also very nice, honestly, and it's a matter of great pride to see an Indian Prime Minister come to the Valley for all of us people of Indian origin. And I think the excitement around what India can be, both as a market for talent, as well as the ability for us to make that a market, I think is what excites us.
That's interesting you say that, because India has really exported top talent to the tech world, at least. You're one shining example of that. But if I may talk to you about the fault lines that still exist. I mean, all of that was said today was very good, but there are points of concerns that are being raised as well. For India to really be a digitized economy, you've got to leverage what you have. You've got to plug the loopholes. And one of the loopholes is that the bandwidth cost is still very high. You have to connect the next billion. What are the points of concern, according to you, as far as Digital India goes?
When I came to this country, I remember that a 3-minute call with my parents in Hyderabad was a luxury, and there wasn't an ability for me to do that.
That's right.
Today, I call my dad every day on Skype, and my parents are able to converse with me. He just sent me a text message. And so I think already today you are seeing the kind of transformation that's going to actually make a huge difference. So I'm a perennial optimist. I just believe that if you have the right vision and if you have people who are excited about the possibilities, great things happen. I mean, look at what's happened with media. Look at what's happened with, every form of industry disruption in India. So might it take a little longer than in the US? Possibly. Will it happen? Absolutely.
That's optimism speaking. Let's talk about what is really at the heart of Digital India, and a lot of that has to do with innovation. Innovation is central to an industry that you operate in. Silicon Valley has thrived because a lot of people here have come and innovated. Ideas have been incubated. People have held hands. They've kind of walked the talk. As far as India is concerned, yes, India innovates, but India innovates only in a crisis. What will it take for India to innovate, to change its own society, to change its own digital landscape? And the fact that, there isn't too much respect for IPR in India. We're beginning to see early signs of an IPR regime coming into place. Is that a point of concern for a person like yourself?
Well, I'll speak about our experiences with Adobe in India. We started with this idea that people in India will innovate at a pace that's equivalent to any other part of the world.
That's right.
And that's played out in spades. When you look at what we've invested in, both in our Bangalore and our Noida facilities, and you look at the quality of work that those folks are doing, it's incredible. It's on par with anything else in the world. And so from my point of view, it all starts with human talent. And India has human talent in abundance. Ironically, I think we're perhaps a little bit more resourceful in India because of all of the potential obstacles that come in the way. And so
the great Indian jugaad is what you're referring to.
That's right. But chalta hai sort of happens. And so I actually have seen our organization mature to the point where the confidence that they have about the fact that they're not just innovating for the Indian market, but they're innovating on a global scale, is I think what drives people. I think the other thing that will drive it is successful exits of startups. So you've seen this explosion of a startup culture.
Right. Yes.
As people look at that and say, hey, if that company can do it, I can do it. And there's a tolerance for risk and there's access to financial capital. There's nothing that precludes the next entrepreneur who's today studying in a university to say, I want to do that. And the means are there already.
It's important you say that, because I was coming to the startup scenario as well. It's buzzing with action. Plenty of billion-dollar babies in the making. The unicorns that we all speak about.
Maybe a little hype at times as well.
I was going to come to that. Do you believe there is a bit of a bubble in the making, and one needs to be a little wary of the billion-dollar babies, so to say?
Well, I think if you look at what's happened in the Valley, I think there are parallels that can be drawn. Namely, there are a number of them that are not sustainable businesses, but there are a lot of sustainable, really critical businesses that emerge as part of that. And I think the same thing will happen in India. The future of distribution in India is going to change. People are going to consume their cricket match on a smartphone.
That's right.
Mobile is going to make a transformative change because the access to mobile technology is different. So they are entrepreneurs who are going to aggressively and effectively figure out how to translate that into sustainable businesses, and some will fall by the wayside. But the beauty of startups, nobody remembers the ones that fall by the wayside. Everybody remembers the successes, and that's what that's what causes an aspirational belief.
And that's perhaps why they also say that the thing about startups is that you also have to realize and remember that you've got to wear your failure as your badge of honor, and you just can't relish success. But what is it about Indian startups that's worrying you? Is it because there's too much concentration around the consumer internet space? Is it perhaps also the fact that, there's a lot of money, but very few companies that money is really sinking into, they're not really tapping the enterprise space?
Actually, nothing worries me about the Indian entrepreneur space. If you look at what Silicon Valley and Sand Hill Road, what was so successful about it was the tolerance for risk, and some of them are going to fail, and some of them are going to be hugely successful. So, people invest, and they should invest with their eyes open. The venture model is not that every company succeeds. So, it actually excites me. People are willing to, without a safety net, say, I'm going to go try something different. And I think that's great.
In your experience, have things changed on the ground in India? For any business to flourish, or for the ecosystem that we are talking about to take off, you need to have a certain ease of doing business. I know we rank a poor 142. The Prime Minister wants to take us to the top 50 club. But have things changed on the ground? Plenty that's been spoken about. But it's difficult not just to start a company in India, but also to wrap up if you want to.
I think what's really changed is relative to my generation, 30 years ago, it felt like, okay, the only way we could do something meaningful was to come abroad, go to graduate school, and then, work our way through large companies. I think the kids there today feel like the world is their oyster. They have aspirations to innovate on a global scale. And I think that's uniquely different from what it was even a decade ago.
So even the aspirations are different.
They're hugely different. I mean, we have brand new TV shows that are coming up, starring Indian actresses. I mean, I think, the people look at the entire world and feel like it's an opportunity for them. And I think that's distinctly different from even 5 or 10 years ago. Because 5 or 10 years ago, all parents of kids wanted their kids to work for these large, well-established companies.
Yes.
And now, the fact that they are all talking about these new age startups that are being successful means that it's culturally and socially acceptable to be in a startup. Exactly. And I think that's a great thing.
Mr. Shantanu Narayen, it's a pleasure talking to you indeed on this edition of the report from the Silicon Valley. Thanks very much for speaking to me.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.